So on behalf of EMA, let me welcome you all. First of all, Dear Excellency, Secretary of State, Dr. Mark Speich, distinguished speakers and guests from Jordan, the MENA region, dear experts from mainly North Rhine-Westphalia in the western part of Germany, dear EMA members. Just in the time of the World Climate Conference COP27 in Egypt, together with you as chosen experts, we want to tackle sustainable cooperation in an industry that is responsible for more than 30% of global CO2 emissions. That is why our today's roundtable is dedicated to climate action in the construction sector, opportunities for Jordanian-German cooperation in architecture and urban planning. Indeed, Germany and Jordan have a shared legacy in the construction sector. It is one of the main pillars of the economy. Demand for housing and related infrastructure, as well as for qualified workforce, has been high throughout the last decade in both our countries. The current German government has fixed the objective of creating no more than 400,000 new housing units per year. At the same time, we're striving for reaching the 1.5 emission goal. Our intention today is to bring you all together as experts of those manifold fields of urban planning, architecture, and construction, and to engage together into an intense... Could you please switch off your microphones? Those who are... Thank you. So to engage together into an intense exchange in view of furthering and sharpening our collaboration also in the upcoming time. Our great thanks goes to the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia, namely to Betissa Sharabian, for the great collaboration in this project. In this regard, please let me give a warm welcome and a virtual dose of applause to not least then the State Secretary for Federal, European and International Affairs and the Media of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Dear Dr. Mark Speich, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor, and dear ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished experts, distinguished speakers, I'm very pleased to open this roundtable today. As the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, we have been enjoying a close friendship and partnership with Jordan for many years in a wide variety of areas, be it in the field of vocational training and further education, in the health sector, or in police cooperation, for instance. Today's networking event on sustainable construction is another important impetus to further develop the relations between our countries and to find out where we can learn from each other and where we can initiate concrete solutions together. Last summer, as the Germans will know, was particularly hot here in Germany. Well, of course, maybe not in Jordanian terms, but at least in German terms, it was really very hot, and we have all felt the effects. Sweltering heat, little shade, big city noise, and car exhaust fumes make city life very exhausting and put an enormous strain on people and nature. Sealed surfaces heat up extremely in the heat, and the temperature difference in large cities can be up to 10 degrees Celsius compared to the countryside. The effects of climate change are becoming abundantly clear, especially in cities, and it is high time to take sensible measures to adapt accordingly in the building sector as well, because building is a fundamentally important factor for sustainability, climate protection, and climate adaptation. Due to the long service life, and due to the particularly high energy and resource consumption of buildings, we have to tackle that field. Sustainable transformation and sustainably successful climate and resource protection can therefore only succeed if the building sector is taken into account. In addition, global developments and crises are currently posing an enormous challenge to our two countries. We are all feeling the immediate effects of the war against Ukraine and are confronted with supply bottlenecks and shortages of raw materials and well, in the Jordan case, also food and basic supply. The price increase for building materials are also tremendous. Now, at the latest, if this had not yet happened, we should understand the signs of the times as a call for reorientation and tackle the issue of sustainability in the building sector, both nationally and internationally. We need to use our existing resources more consciously and be more aware of how we use them. Environmentally harmful consumption of resources must be stopped. We must minimize energy consumption and construct new buildings that are as climate neutral as possible. We need higher refurbishment quotas that focus on energy efficient, climate friendly, and sustainable modernization. And we must use renewable energies to a much greater extent than before for heat and power supply for buildings. These tasks place increased demands on building materials, construction methods, and structural forms. We need alternative and innovative building materials and construction methods to be successful here. But above all, it is not enough and not sufficient for us to position ourselves well in a national sense. We must act internationally because climate and resource protection does not stop at national borders, and that's what we all know. We need international approaches and a joint basis to build, to plan, and to operate buildings sustainably worldwide. And that is precisely why we want to exchange ideas today, find points of contact, work out joint solutions, and set important impetuses for sustainable building. I hope you will discuss many exciting topics today, meet, at least in a virtual way, interesting project partners, and lay the foundation for an active network between our countries. I wish us all a good and trusting and fruitful cooperation, and that we find good ideas for the future of building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Speich, Secretary of State, for this already very rich picture of the various fields of expertise we want to share today, and also to focus on solutions, but at the same time also naming some of the problems. This is already rich food for thought for our now upcoming roundtable. And again, I would like to give some technical notes that for all those who have joined us right now, you may switch into the gallery view in order to see all speakers, and you may hide the non-participant view so that you see really only those who are going to present now. It may be a little bit easier to follow. If you have questions, you may also ask those questions in the chat, technical-wise, but also content-wise, because we want to engage into a larger conversation with you after the first pitch round. And for those pitches, because we have a very, as you can see, very large and interesting panel today from Jordan and Germany, I would like to give each participant a first round of, let's say, 2 to 4 minutes in order to present your main fields of work, your main thoughts for today's roundtable that you would like to share. I leave it in a very open way because you are the experts, and it's a big chance for us to get to know each other and to discover our experiences more. And in order to start, I would like to present to you Engineer Lina Mubaidin, Head of Project Development Department. So Lina Mubaidin serves as Head of the Project Development Department of the Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund, short GREEEF. So the Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund. In doing so, she has promoted the design and the development of the legal and institutional framework for energy efficiency in Jordan over the past 19 years. Wow, congratulations. And in that regard, Lina, you play a central role in the implementation of the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan in Jordan, working closely with all stakeholders in the different sectors to achieve your ambitious goals. So please share with us your experience about the energy transition in Jordan's urban spaces, and the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Very much. First of all, hello everybody. I am so proud to be part of this very impressive panel and to share with you our achievement in the energy transition to renewable energy and energy efficiency, and also to highlight the achievement of our Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund. As you all know, that the energy sector is one of the most vital sector in Jordan. And we have a very great challenges and a high burden of the cost of the energy on the Jordan economy. But in spite of all these challenges, we succeed to develop our legal and our regulatory framework to have a good and accelerate the energy transition to renewable energy and energy efficiency. And the ministry in the energy sector have succeeded in building a very procedural base in renewable energy, and this lead to a very significant increase in the participation of renewable energy in the energy mix on both sides, on the supply side and on the demand side, either by signing a variety of purchase agreements for mega project and direct proposal renewable energy, and also for the wheeling system and net metering system for the final beneficiary, which lead to achieve more than 10.8% of renewable energy in the electric power generated mix by the end of 2018. And the most important also step to accelerate the energy transition of Jordan to renewable energy and energy efficiency is the establishment of Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund, mainly to encourage the investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency in small facilities for all stakeholders, especially in the building sector, which include also the construction industry in our program and our project. Maybe later we will highlight all of these projects and program in our discussion, and I'm happy to have some knowledge and to share information with all the impressive panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. This was indeed short and concise. So renewable energy as the main core resource for construction. We will pick this up a little bit later. Now I would like to head over to Dr. Jan Polivka. Jan Polivka, you are the head of the research group, Spatial Planning and Urban Design at the EILS Research Institute for Regional and Urban Development in Dortmund. You have studied urban and regional planning at TU Berlin University and Japanese studies also at Charles University, Prague, and Humboldt University, Berlin. Your dissertation, your PhD, has been at TU Dortmund already. So you are really yes, renowned researcher. You have been also to Tokyo, New York City, Columbia University, and Osaka University. And you are qualified as a junior professor for sustainable housing development at the RWTH Aachen University. And today I would like, yes, to ask you about your experience on sustainability and the transformation of urban spaces. So please give us your impressions.
Yes, thank you very much and good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be able to join this meeting. I have been introduced already, also my institute. We are a state institute of the North Rhine-Westphalia, which is the most inhabited state in the German federal system. We have 18 million people, and the Planning Institute is supporting the government of the state in the topics of sustainable spatial development. So the institute itself is dedicated to sustainability, and one of the main topics is the sustainable development of settlement space, because the space is very scarce. We still have uninhabited space, but this space is mostly used for protection of nature or used by the agriculture or other industries. So one of the main points is to have a sustainable development within the space, and that means sustainable development of the urban structures. And this is applying for large cities, but also for many middle-sized and also small cities. We are working on 4 topics, which one is the geodata management and analysis for the development in space. We are doing this for the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, but also for reflection of the development in the whole federal state of Germany. And one of the topics, of course, is the development of space and the climate implications, for example, on disparities, social disparities among the inhabitants. It also means the topic of social cohesion, but also mobility. We are talking a lot about traffic, but we are also talking about spatial mobility and social mobility, and all these also in the last years, together with the topic of climate change and the chances that are changing in certain areas of the state. And my department is working, as has been said, on spatial planning and urban design, and our topic is actually the topic of negotiation between conflicts of spatial use. So one of the conflicts, of course, is the conflicts of functions. Because the space is scarce, we have especially conflicts between industry and production and housing, because housing is a protected function and needs space to be distanced from industries. And we have a very strong industrial development which demands space. And both of these demands are very important and need to be brought into balance. The other part is then the topic of new quarter development. This is the question how we can use the space in very effective ways. That means mixture of uses, short distances, 15-minute city, and how can we reflect in the existing and the new quarters the change in climate development, especially the topic of heat islands and water management, because the water catastrophes are coming also to Germany. And just last year we had a large water catastrophe at the western part of the North Rhine-Westphalia state. Many people died and many settlements had been destroyed. And also in other cities, which until now have not been touched by these topics, we have local challenges. So we are dealing with conflicts which are in uses, but also conflicts between the density of the development, especially in the new and existing quarters, and the demand for more green space and more space for water management. We have many projects which are trying to answer at least part of these questions. How to use water in very densely inhabited quarters, how to save the water and recycle it, how to use it for growing plants. So we are saving fuel and efforts on transportation for food, and how we can connect these topics of food and of natural resources in the city with the topic of social disparities. My projects are mostly related to the planning topics and the conflicts in planning law, which means what actually the planning law allows on mixture and density in Germany, which is quite regulated, and what we would like to have as a density and mixed use. And together with the RWTH Aachen University and the students there and the ministry, we are working on projects which are allowing now to figure out the design means that are helping on very, very scarce space to answer these questions, including traffic, including water management, including the high quality that is necessary for housing in order to retain the health of the inhabitants. I'm very looking forward for the discussions that is ahead. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jan. So This was also a very rich contribution already. So we talked about heat islands, the water management, social cohesion, mobility, health, traffic, and also the German planning law. I'm really curious of having more insights now from experts of North Rhine-Westphalia, and I would like to give the floor to Knut Megale, Ecosystems Director of Gerber Architekten, also in Dortmund. So as Ecosystems Director of Gerber Architekten, Mr. Megale, you have many years of international experience in urban planning, architecture, and landscape architecture projects. You have experience with large-scale projects across the country and Europe, and the interest in different cultures that Knut Megale has had since his early youth was combined with the profession in the last years when you got the opportunity to work with the high authorities in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia on environmental and urban themes of large scale. So you have undertaken numerous trips around and outside the Middle East, and please today you can show us challenges and opportunities you have met of greening the desert, and also the potentials you see for further cooperation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, as Ecosystems Director for Gerber Architekten, who sit in Dortmund, I'm also Senior Landscape Director for the Gerber-Happold-Cetek joint venture, currently trying to find new ways and creating a benchmark mega project that will help us in regreening the desert. First of all, for us, it's very important that we must respect and restore ecosystems to tackle climate change, save species from extinction, and secure thereby our own future. It's very important that we understand that human well-being and the thriving of our species is, of course, inseparably linked to the thriving of all other species. So we need to take action, and we need to do that with clear and measurable targets. In every project, we need to start from the very beginning, from the very basics. We need to question everything. We cannot accept anything as a given. Of course, we need to respect the cultural traditions of a place, and we need to be aware of cultural sensitivities. But really, we need to take everything to the very beginning and start afresh. We have great opportunities in making use of our global society and our swarm intelligence. So surrounding ourselves with experience and ambition is what keeps such challenging projects running, really. Environmental sustainability begins with the understanding that next to the built infrastructure of our cities, we need to also provide for the natural infrastructure, or what we call the natural infrastructure. So granting space in our built environment for ecological assets, giving opportunities to build an interconnected ecological system for people, and what we often simplistically call nature. What we mean with the natural infrastructure is essentially three main ingredients. These are the soils, the water, and the plants, which then in summary are creating the microclimate or new conditions or existing conditions that we find in place. The infrastructure of our cities needs to be questioned entirely and interrogated thoroughly so that it can be adjusted to allow us the responsible and resourceful use of water, providing the highest water quality for the entire system to avoid any failures anywhere, either downstream or really anywhere in the entire cycle of the used water. This often takes huge investments by cities and authorities, but investing in nature is not only profitable, it is necessary, and it is, of course, obligatory. Creating and providing healthy soils to allow for lasting regenerative pedogenesis and the healthy development of what we call the invisible realm, working towards a high biodiversity in plants, using and exploring the indigenous flora local to the place of planning, which is of course best equipped for the local conditions, but also tackling climate change and preparing our environment for future challenges by safely exploring a promising world flora, which may be utilized for the project at hand, while always, of course, respecting international regulations of biosecurity. All that to create a healthy environment, healthier plants, tree assets, spaces with strong biological performance that give us as people the environment and the surroundings that we appreciate and that where we want to live, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Knut Megale. I would like to turn now to our second architecture office of this round, namely steadily, Matthias Pfeiffer. You're a senior partner and managing director at the RKW Architektur in Düsseldorf. You have several decades of expertise in architecture and urban planning, and your great success has, amongst others, been in the new conception of city centers and in the implementation of the planning method called BIM, Building Information Modeling. You have won lots of awards and are very active in different boards of the construction community, let's say. So our question, or my question now is, what is your contribution to today's panel, and what do you think are the most promising and innovative approaches or projects in your field of expertise? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to talk to you. Indeed, RKW is a quite big 450 people architectural office, one of the biggest in Germany. And so sustainability, of course, is one of the major or important topics which we are dealing with. And so we have a special sustainability lab where people just dedicate themselves to find solutions in this field. And we have what we call MADA, Material Data Bank, on our own to provide all our planners with information about materials so that sustainable material can be introduced in our projects. But I also want to talk a little about Germany. Germany has a long tradition about sustainability in its legislation. The legal standards according to sustainability increased over decades already, but the emphasis then was taken much more on the operational energy consumption, which decreased and decreased. And so we have a very low standard already reached in Germany for the new building according to operational operational energy consumption. And that leads to the fact that it is doubtable if it is useful to pump more and more money into this field, because the further approach or the further success is no more so high, because we have already a very high standard, which means in Germany, other than in Jordan, we talk about heating. In Jordan, people are talking about cooling. It's a quite different thing. And that led the legislation to the fact that the money should, especially also the public financial support for this, should be leaded much more not into the new building, which is only 1 to 2% of the buildings which we have in Germany every year, but more, the emphasis is much more going into the field of refurbishment. Because every euro we spend, we have much more success with this if we spend it into existing building, because they are so bad, and so we can make good progress by refurbishment of existing buildings. We try to get this partly, at least, into an industrial scale, because it's not only easy, not easy to finance this, it's also not easy to find people who do it. So it's such a lot of work. So we have a need of rationalization of this. Existing buildings, because of the energy consumption in the operation, but also the emphasis, of course, went away, or not away, but emphasis is much more taken now to the global warming potential of buildings, not only the operational buildings. And that means that we have to save our old buildings, not only because of historical reasons, but because of energy reasons, to save the global warming potential, which is included into this building, especially in Germany, which has a long tradition of concrete buildings, which of course have a lot of global warming potential in themselves. This is not easy because it is often not feasible. It is cheaper to dismantle the buildings completely instead of refurbish them very deeply if you have very deep impact into the buildings. Okay, that's a problem we have not yet solved. Material is of course important. We all need concrete is not good. Wood is good. So wood construction really increases in Germany, but there's a limitation, or will be a limitation. It is already because of limited availability of wood, of course. We cannot do everything in wood. So we have to find solutions beside wood. And for my opinion, one of the things is steel, because then we have the possibility to have lightweight constructions, which is very important. It saves lots and lots of GBP. And steel is recycled in Germany by 99%. Nearly all steel which ever was in Germany will be recycled. There's nearly no loss of steel. This is also an important fact. For all this, BIM is of course necessary. This is this planning method, because if we want to know what is in our buildings, we have to do it digitally, and the BIM is important. I will not talk more about that because it would last hours, and I will not do that. Now we are talking about Jordan, and that means we need, or you need, so as we also need, climate adequate planning. And the emphasis in Jordan obviously is cooling, and that means shading. That is what you have to do. And in Germany, still it's the other way around. The major point is still heating. Cooling is only in office building and shopping centers and something like that, but it is not very common yet in the housing. So we save a lot of energy by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. I'm very sure that many of your mentioned points will give a lot of food for our discussion later on. And it is my big pleasure to now turn the stage to Mohammed Aspour, because I'm sure you have a lot to say. Mohammed, we know each other for many years already, and you serve as a consultant for the Green Building Council in Jordan. And yes, you have many years of experience as an entrepreneur and supporter of sustainable building in Jordan, but also in the whole region. So you have gained extensive experience in the field of sustainable construction as a regional director for the World Green Building Council, MENA and Africa Network. You're a senior advisor to the USAID Energy Sector Capacity Building Program, advisor to the Board of Trustees of Jordan's Princess Sumaya University for Technology, and many, many more. So Mohammed, what would be your main contributions today? I'm sure you have a lot of them, but yes, the floor is just yours. And please just respect the time for all of you. I will give you a second round later in order to go deeper into the different points. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for the great introduction and for giving me this opportunity. Just as a quick correction, heating is a big issue in Jordan. It's currently 13 degrees and it's raining outside. And we suffered a heavy snowfall last year. That we'll be talking about. Now, just to give you an idea about the situation in Jordan, we were, I think, and I'll add to my colleague Lena's introduction, we were the first country in the Arab Mashriq to adopt a renewable energy and energy efficiency law. This means that we've always been pioneers on a regional level when discussing environmental, climate, and energy issues. And I think this was driven by necessity, because in Jordan, we import most of our energy, or we used to import bigger amounts of energy. Now, I think the last figure is that we produce about 26 or 27% from our energy through renewable means. A lot of this was led by the private sector and facilitated by the government, which helped us achieve a leading position in this regard in the Middle East and North Africa, at least. Now, another big achievement, I think, was the creation of the Jordan Green Building Council back in 2009. I had the pleasure of chairing it for 2 terms. And through the Green Building Council, we've trained thousands of architects and engineers across the region. For those who do not know, I think Jordan is said to have the 2nd highest percentage of architects and engineers on a global level. It's a small population, but we have, I think, over 150, 160,000 architects and engineers. And one of the ways through which we tried to support them was trying to build their capacity and direct them to green building. And I think Bureau Happel, one of your senior managers on a regional level, was a trainee at the Jordan Green Building Council maybe 12 or 13 years ago. So human capital is something we focus on in Jordan a lot. And we've also, together with Qatar and Emirates in Singapore back in 2010, I signed an agreement to establish the MENA Green Building Council Network, which brought together regional players from across the region. Of course, green building councils are non-for-profits. Their members are usually private companies who work closely with the government to spread the adoption of green building practices. Now, on another front in Jordan, I think we've spent a good effort in developing new building codes that took sustainability into account. However, the challenge here, I think, is to ensure that these codes are implemented through a third-party organization that we lack at the moment. Now, I'm also very proud to have been part of the royal vision to modernize the economy, and we had a specific committee on the green economy and on climate change, where the issue of green buildings came up often. And I think in His Majesty's speech at the COP maybe yesterday, he touched upon the importance of utilizing this green transition in also benefiting the economy, which is something we are working on. Now, in terms of the future, I think we need to now start thinking beyond buildings and think of the built environment in general, see how the different components interconnect. We cannot look at buildings without looking at urban development or expansion. Jordan is facing huge challenges when it comes to the urban sprawl. Just to give you an idea, the population of Amman now is over 4 million. When my grandfather was born here in 1913, it was less than 10,000. So from 10,000 to over 4 million in about 100 years. So managing this is a big challenge that we need to address. Now, we need, I think, to extend our thinking about carbon from operating buildings to embodied carbon. I often see buildings in the region that consume a lot of cement, a lot of embodied carbon, and then boast about them being energy efficient. We cannot continue doing this in the future. We really need to look at the full cycle of carbon and not only at the operational carbon. And I think it's really important that by 2030, every new building is a net zero building. And I really believe that this is something that is possible. Now, resilience is another issue that needs to be taken into account. I mentioned how last year we usually get snow in winter, but this time it was really heavy. and it happened during a short period of time. So a lot of trees fell down and they caused electricity shortages in many parts of our city. What was the solution? They went and cut the trees. Of course, in the long run, this is not really a wise thing to do, because I heard the word heat island, and to address the heat island issue, we need to really focus on bringing nature back into cities. And I also have the pleasure of chairing an NGO called Wadi, whereby we are using native species. We work closely with the US Forest Service, and I think currently our team is with the chief of the US Forest Service, who's visiting Jordan, to show how we could be using also native species as a nature-based solution that would address the climate change issue, and also bringing nature back into the city to reduce the heat island effect. Circularity within the built environment is another issue that really needs to be addressed, and looking into the life cycle of a building. Finally, we need to do all of this in an affordable manner. We as Jordan live in a rich neighborhood. We do not have the same financial resources others have. So we need to be sustainable and green while being affordable at the same time. I think this is a main challenge, but I trust we have highly qualified people who can work with our partners from across Europe and the world to improve this situation when it comes to climate change and resilience in the country. I hope I was brief enough, Clara.
Thank you, Mohammed. Indeed, very, very interesting thoughts and expertise you have shared here. And I have a good transition here for our next speaker, Nora Legitimo, because Mohammed, you have mentioned that by 2040, every building shall be a net zero building, and you believe it's happening and it's possible. And that also the life cycle of a building should be, it should be sustainable, but in an affordable manner. And Nora, maybe you can bring us more insight into your day-to-day work at Schock Bauteile GmbH, working on digitizing the construction business. So let me introduce you first. You are the CDO, so the Chief Digital Officer at Schock Bauteile GmbH, and you have studied business administration with SAP before. So you have had various positions in the IT and process consulting, as well as carrying responsibility for a holistic corporate transformation program in medium-sized company. And now you turned to the SME construction field and are head of the digitization department of the family-run company Schock Bauteile, and they support customers and internal departments in digitizing the construction process and the development, planning, and implementation phase of construction projects. And you want to support an uncomplicated digital flow of information next to the established flow of materials. Besides this, we know each other also from our activities in the Working Moms organization, Reno Network for Mothers in Leadership Positions. And I'm glad you made it today, and to share everything that you can contribute on how to make construction more digital, and what digitization may also contribute to sustainability in this sector. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Clara, for the invitation, and glad to join this round. So I want to give everyone a bit of a optimism how we can change the things we need to tackle. So we are in a medium-sized company, and actually it's always about load bearing and isolation if it's on our terms. So when you are a small company providing very specific products for huge buildings, so how can you be relevant? And I want to give you an example where the digital world and the construction world, together with sustainability, tackle the same questions. And so if you think of how much digitization changed all of our daily lives. And we think back 15 years, for example, that's not a long time span, but it was completely different. So something like today wouldn't have been possible in this. And so it's in our daily habits, we already changed a lot. But in industries like construction, we have so long proven processes and habits on how we work and how we work together. And it is quite hard to change these kind of how we work. And so when we think 15 years back, IT and digital had a really bad reputation. It was never in time. You had a plan was never met. You planned some budget, it was never enough. You had so many experts, but you always failed your targets. And I think this sounds a bit familiar to what we are tackling in all of our industry challenges as well. And I want to give an insight on what radically changed in the digital world. And the big change that happened is that we went away from this belief that every expert needs to be responsible for his field or her field of expertise. We team up. We completely changed how we work on big IT projects. It's this whole word of working in agile teams. It's a horrible world, but how does it really work? The big change is that we feel responsible for the results. Everyone out of their expertise feels responsible for the end, for the result that's the target for everyone, not for your single task. And by changing the way of working, instead of starting with a design, then giving it to a planner, having someone who makes it possible to build it, and later on those people on the construction site who needs to do it, bring them closer together, not only from an information point of view or digital point of view, but from their mindset, that everyone knows that the input is relevant for the result. And by teaming up and not thinking of like specialist work, but by really gathering as a kind of community and then delivering this project, being humble and listen to the other expert, reflecting on the best result and learning how to do a compromise that is better for the result instead of just getting your mission across. This will make a big change. And by doing that, the world of digital gains so much speed. And I think we need that for sustainability as well. And today, a lot of experts in sustainability work as consultants. We heard that a lot of it is more not on a profit-based matter, but actually we listen to them too less. We need to listen a lot more, but we will only change the habit on how we work together if we really think that through as a whole team and not as like single superheroes who try to save the world, but better teaming up. And so I think in the construction sector, we can learn a lot from the failures of the past of digital projects, which are so much the same, so big, never in time, never in budget, always a pain, but that changed. I'm sure we can achieve this change together also in the construction industry on a global level.
Thank you, Nora. I like your optimism, and although you just finished that we should learn from failures of the past, and I'm looking forward to our discussion later on to see how those learnings should look like. And at the same time, it's a very good transition you made, and I didn't even expect that, to our next two speakers, because we will look a little bit more into the human resources side of this construction sector. I would like to present to you now Mr. Heinz Rittmann. Heinz Rittmann, you have been head of the business management department at Bauverbände NRW e.V. more than 2 decades, so the Federation of Construction Associations in North Rhine-Westphalia, and you act as Deputy General Manager since 2019, and you are also since 2000, so more than 20 years ago, you're involved in the foreign activities of this federation and are Executive Director of the Deutsche Auslandsbauverband e.V., so let's say Federation of the Construction Associations working in Germany and abroad. Could you please share with us your human resources perspective, because you have been active in Jordan for a while in the field of TVET, and please share your best practice and your thoughts in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. I welcome you from my side too. I hope you understand me, my limited English. My name is Heinz Rittmann, and we are working in Jordan since some years, I think around about 5 years meanwhile. Corona was a little bit, or let's say in this way, not helpful. So we made a lot of things on the digital way, and we are working in Jordan with 3 different partners concerning the initial training activities in Jordan, in the Jordan construction sector, and also for further qualification. These 3 partners are Jordan Construction Contractors Association, so our counterpart in Jordan, an association of construction companies. Then we are working together with NET, National Employment and Training. In the past, they were the only institution who is responsible for initial trainings in the Jordan construction sector. And TVSDC, the Technical and Vocational Skills Development Commission. I always have to learn this vocabulary. These are our 3 partners, and with Ms. Drescher, we are working in different sectors. We are specialized in the construction sector. And if you ask me what is the first lesson that we learned, I must answer, Jordan is neither Germany, neither North Rhine-Westphalia. It's completely different, and you can't compare it with other foreign countries from our perspective, completely different. And what are we doing more in detail in our topic of initial training and further training, further qualification? We have to capacitate the, let's say, training institutes, because the system in Jordan is completely different from the German training system. We have to work out, let's say, together with our partners, cooperation models. And also we have to, to introduce, let's say, a system of accreditation and certification concerning the whole training system, initial training system. More in practice, what are we doing? For example, we work together with our partners concerning the curricula. What is the private sector or what needs the private sector, the private construction sector in Jordan? And then we try to develop, let's say, new ideas and integrate them in the existing occupational standards. And one topic, and this I think is the bridge, that we also try to integrate the topics of health and safety, and also the topics of the ecological construction work in Jordan. And sometimes there are big discussions, but I think it's our duty in general that we try to convince the stakeholders, to open their mind, not only concerning health and safety, but also concerning the ecological topics, integrate them in the occupational standards. And it needs time, definitely, but we are still today hopeful that we will be successful with all these kind of activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rittmann. So ecological needs or ecological topics shall be part of the standards. Very important point you raised. And now we turn to the part 2 of the human resources presentations. I am happy to give the last word to you, Eika Drescher. You are head of international, technical and vocational education and training at the KH Service and Wirtschaftsgesellschaft MBA, so the Chamber of Crafts at Steinfurt-Warendorf. You have run several projects in Africa already, and now you have a project of the Chamber of Crafts at Steinfurt-Warendorf, based in Jordan, and this is underway. And with this project, you aim to improve employment opportunities in the skilled trades for youth and young adults. In this way, you're making an important contribution to improving the provision of apprenticeships and the application of the German education model in other countries. And now please give us your insights on your work in Jordan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I have to clarify, we are not a chamber. So we are called Kreishandwerkerschaft. This is a bad German word, I would say, but we are more an association, and we do the educational part for the dual system here in the North Rhine-Westphalia, Steinfurt-Warendorf. So we are since 2019 in Jordan with the GIZ project funded by the BMZ. And we work there together with the Jordan Ministry of Labor on image campaigns. So we realized the global problem of academization is a challenge also in Jordan. And that's why we had a first phase of an image campaign where we promote the skilled craft sector. And now we are at the moment in the second phase because of the great success. Maybe you can watch some YouTube videos. Because of the great success of the first phase, we now developing the second phase, and we identified 4 crafts. So it's mainly carpentry, car mechanics, and bakery, and electricians. And it was important for us to show what can be in the skilled craft sector, how attractive the skilled craft sector is, and especially the electricians. They are regarding to solar panels, and not only to do like the housework, they can build up huge solar fields. And so that's why the poster looks like where you will see an electrician working on a solar panel. So the modern approach, and of course the sustainability. Car mechanics was a bit difficult to find in electronica because it's growing, but it's not there at the moment in a huge manner. So that is our main part, the image campaign, to attract people to the craft sector. And another part is we work close together with the Prince Target Institute, and there we train bakery and do support the women who work there, and they are really successful in doing nice things and that they can sustain themselves. And yeah, for us, it's important, of course, the TVET part, and not only engineers or architects have to think about sustainability and green housing, because the workers who implement the plans, they need to know. And that's why it's important, as Mr. Rittmann says, to redevise the curricula, develop new ideas into the apprenticeship, and yeah, be up to date with the topic of sustainability in the working environment and in the training for the houses. So that's why we are there, and we work together, yeah, with many partners in this huge project in Jordan. And hopefully you can see the second part of the image campaign in a few weeks in Amman on billboards and in TV. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aika. So best of luck for the second part of your program. And you mentioned the point that it's important that also those who implement sustainability in the various sectors, they need to be aware and trained. We have now come to a close of the first pitching round, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel very enriched of different perspectives and points of view. But at the same time, I feel there's great awareness amongst everyone, and that there need to be a joint action, that we need to look for more sustainable resources, refurbishment, and so on. At the same time, initially, we have seen that the construction sector holds about more than 30% of the global carbon emissions. So now I would like to engage you a little bit into more interaction. So which could be similarities and differences you have discovered? Is there anything that you have learned from each other, or where you say, no, this is completely going wrong? Let's be brave and be a little bit, I wouldn't say in conflict, but talk about more concrete action. And at the same time, I also invite our participants to raise their question in the chat if you have any contributions to make. Last but not least, we're following all very closely what's happening at COP27 and Egypt. Would you feel the topics we discuss right now here are sufficiently being taken into account? Anyone who wants to have the first word? Mohammed.
Yes, so the first COP I started working on in terms of green buildings was COP15, and today we are in COP27. And the simple answer is no. I think much more needs to be done. We do not realize the urgency of the issue, and we aren't really giving buildings and their emissions the importance they require. And as I mentioned, it's not just operational emissions or emissions related to operations, but it's also related to embodied carbon within the built environment, which means all the products we are surrounded by, all of them have embodied carbon. How could we also start working on that? So I think there needs to be much more focus on the built environment within the COPs and within the global policy on tackling the climate change issue.
Lina, please. Then Jan.
Yes, thank you. All I emphasize on a very important component that when we are talking about the green building, or when we are talking about the building, we have many have to overcome, we have to address, we have to develop in order to go for a green building, not net zero or zero carbon emission. I think it's not obvious in the near future, because first of all, we have to look to the market. Jordan is still not mature enough. We do not have the good material in order to build on in the construction industry. And also we have to somehow accredit the company, the construction contractor that can build and can be involved in the infrastructure and in building the green building. We in Jordan, country in the Arab region that developed the building code in our first and second National Energy Efficiency Action Plan. The most important measure we have is to enforce the building code. The building code is the minimum requirement when we are talking about the green building. It's the minimum requirement, and still we have a very big challenge to enforce this building code. And now we establish a new unit in the National Green, in the National Building Council, in the Ministry of Public Force, this building code. When we are talking about the regulatory framework, and also we have to accredit the company, the contractor that accredited to build the building that are aligned with our minimum requirements first of all, then we are talking about the green building. And now when we are talking the owner or the final beneficiary, or in the residential sector or any other sector, it must be affordable for them. As my colleague Mohammed said, first of all, in JREEF, in Jordan Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Fund, when we start to design our program for roof insulation for the low-income family, and to give them some incentive in order to build and to begin in this to implement this project, we didn't find any incentive tool to encourage them. because they have to take a grant fully granted in order to implement. Otherwise, they cannot have the income or the priority for this measure. So it's still in Jordan, we need more. We have a lack of awareness, we have lack in the maturity of the market. We have to build in, we have to work with in order to go, first of all, to implement the minimum requirement, then to go to the green building. Now we are working with the Ministry of Environment, with the Jordan Royal Society, in order to develop some regulation or some instruction to licensing or accredited a contractor to be aligned with the green building. So we have much more work to do and to be a cooperative work in all entities in order to go forward and to achieve somehow a green building in Jordan. But net zero or zero emission, I think it's not valid for the near future. Thank you very much.
Jan, would you like to move on?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would have just some more remarks on the previous statements. Well, we have a kind of common challenge in terms of sustainable development of the cities, and of course, when we detail it on the climate change, the thing is actually that we are mostly, or comparably, I would say, in possession of the laws that are enabling us to do so in Germany. But where we do see challenges is actually the process that is leading to these results that have been stated. So if we want to really implement energy low standard buildings, and we want to go into the embodied carbon and or the operative efficiency of buildings, then it's not only about the laws, it's also about the processes. And I think it's a common issue. Yeah. So we have, of course, difference. Maybe the dynamics in Jordan is much faster at the moment. I mean, it has been said that we are renewing only 1 or 2% of our housing stock every year. So, so this is very slow, and we actually don't know what will happen in the next year coming. But basically, the issue of the process is actually depending to the large complexity of the task, as had been just said. For example, the incentives are going into one direction for incentives for using such certain materials, but they are connected to the economy of the building when it is being built or refurbished, and about the knowledge of the investors and the acceptance of the users. So that means that in order to trigger this kind of very complex process and make it simpler, it is necessary to have a kind of integrated system of incentives and a kind of integrated system of support for such processes. And I believe that the concentration or the focus on these processes, how we can get there with the means that we have, is an issue that despite of the different let's say marks in the law, in the building law, construction law, is a kind of common issue, yeah, and a big task for the future. And I think that the cooperation between different experts on this, yeah, and different disciplines is very important to reach it.
Thank you, Jan. So it's not only about the legal framework, it's also about the processes. And I have just, to prepare myself this morning, listened to a podcast on sustainable construction, and what I have learned, and what I would like to raise as question now to you, Heinz Rittmann. I see that you raised your hand already, but it is a question that comes to my mind because taking into account that the legal framework in Germany is quite far, especially in the field of refurbishment that you have mentioned, Mr. Rittmann, I've learned this morning that there's a big gap in Germany of what is allowed in refurbishment, and there's this problem of finding the right norm system and norming system, and it takes time. Do you agree with that? And what would be your thoughts, please?
Let me say in this way. The construction companies in Jordan and also in Germany have the challenge that the client is at final the person who decides what he wants. If the client is not willing, let's say, to build a new house in an ecological way or renovate his existing house in an ecological way, then it will be very difficult for all of us. So our main topic, that means architect, engineers, construction company, is to convince the client about the need and the benefit of a, let's say, greenhousing project. That's point number one. So the client is the bottleneck. If the client is not willing, that could be the public client, that could be a commercial client, that could be the private client. And one remark to Ms. Dr. Polivka, you mentioned that we invest at the moment around about 1 up to 2% in the, let's say, rehabilitation process of existing buildings. So my number is that we every year put around about 1% inside. The challenge will be if we try to double it from 1 up to 2%, we need more than 100,000 workers in the German construction sector more. Please tell me someone where we can get them. So not possible. And I think the existing laws in Germany concerning, let's say, renovation, maintenance of buildings is very complex. I think, or I'm hopefully, that Berlin and also Düsseldorf understand that all the existing rules are not always very helpful. You must be very careful with it. There are some laws that we need, definitely, but some other laws I think that are more or less useless. You must look in detail, you can't generalize it, but we must decrease our bureaucracy. That's my opinion at this point. Thank you.
Does anyone want to answer right away? Jan, I saw you opening your mouth. Yes or no?
Yeah, well, I can just say one more sentence. Our experience in this is, of course, that especially the refurbishment of the housing stock is so complex, just coming from the rules. Yeah. That many investors are scared to start a refurbishment of an existing building. And we have the discussions about investments on greenfields or tearing down and build a new, which was a solution for a long time. But in terms of this embodied carbon, this is not very helpful. So indeed, the rules are trying to help, but they are not helping all the time. And this is not only the rules, but also the incentives and the state support system is very complicated and partly contradictory. And I believe that this is also a point that needs to be made. So not all the regulations or the supports that we have are quite supportive in this, because they are kind of partly over-regulated. And my point again, we need to get into the process, thinking from the process, which is quite complex, and from the people who are targeted. This had been mentioned, where the bottlenecks, or some of them, and then start to think about the rules and not the other way around. Yeah, that would be a kind of, suggestion of critics. I don't know, for the German concept. I don't know if we can learn something for this for Jordan, but yeah.
Thank you. And also, Lina, you mentioned that those incentives should be affordable. So is it all a question about price, or is it Is there more we could do as incentives? I see Knut Megale and then Mohammed, please.
Yes, thank you. I think, of course, we are discussing now on very different scales, right? I mean, we are talking about government authority levels right down to the normal family who perhaps wishes to build a house for themselves. And when it comes to a lot of the local building codes, we find the same in Saudi Arabia. You need to crack them right open. I mean, if you want to change things, basically, you need government entities who are willing to completely bypass outdated building codes and try new ways, find new ways, thereby creating systems, finding systems, testing systems, and providing systems that then can be applied by the end user. I feel that very often Germany perhaps is already on a good way, but it could be much, much improved, I believe. What we ask of investors, particularly when it comes to residential areas or any other kinds of developments, we need to be asking much more, really. I think the government has the opportunity to really impose means for a more green construction, to provide healthier environments, but it needs to the government needs to take up that responsibility. It's what I would clearly ask or argue for.
Yes, please, Mohammed.
Okay, so our approach initially, and I'm talking when we founded the Jordan Green Building Council in 2009 and then the MENA network, was to work on the market-led aspect of the issue. And remember, maybe 12, 13 years ago, there wasn't much awareness about green buildings and sustainable buildings. So we wanted to prove that it is possible and it makes sense economically. One of our partners, which is a big real estate company, when I worked at the World GBC, of course, was Majd Al Futtaim, which is a company that employs about 50,000 people. And they were going into efficiency and net zero, etc., from a totally economic perspective. I was evaluating a competition and they already were building a net positive building, not just a net zero building. Being between both the public and the private sector during my career, I saw that we were always reluctant to believe that we could do something. So for example, in 2008, I think when Jordan launched its energy strategy, the target was 20% renewable energy by 2020. We've exceeded that number. So I think within this sector, we really need to believe that something could be done, because unless we do something, the consequences are beyond repair. So we don't, I think, have the option to say, no, we can't. We really need to. And the private sector is giving examples of how this could be done. Finally, there's also this issue of perception. Many years ago, when the market wasn't so developed in terms of green alternatives and concepts, yes, the cost was high. Now there are new technologies, there are new ways to go about things, and it's not as expensive as people think. And this is why on the public sector side, there really needs to be regulations that ensure that at least the minimum requirement is fulfilled, and then leave it to the private sector also to show leadership whenever possible.
Nora, please.
Yes, thank you, Mohammed. I think I like to add to this one, because we also need to unlearn what we encounter. Our products go into the shell of a building, and so we always vanish in concrete, and all around us is steel. And there's already so much science going on, and already materials which can be used with new concrete recipes, with using glass fibers instead of steel. We had this in another impulse today. But however, we do it as we always did it. And I do not want to give all this kind of the government needs to. It is also our responsibility to think differently and to make proposals and to join as experts and say there are possibilities to do things differently. And this can be a normal small housing for a family, but of course it needs to be a more bigger structured way for the cities and more driven by the government and the regulation. Well, I think it's also important that we change our habits and that we make usage also out of this.
Okay, Knut Megale.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And of course, you know, you need to bring together the right people. As you say, in certain industries, there is already a lot of think tanks and a lot of thinking going on to develop things in the right direction. Depending on the, let's say, the area, geographic area that we look at and about which we discuss, I think it's just that sometimes, you know, you not arguing for a government to provide things necessarily, but to allow you to experiment in new ways is also a very important factor. If we really try to investigate a system to its very basics and following back, let's say, if it's a material, follow the track back to the very origin. Where is this material coming from? How it is produced? How it is finding its way to the location, but also how entire systems in terms of material procurement, but also infrastructure are set up. This is where you need to drill down, and this is where from the, let's say, on a higher level, government level or national level, huge investments may be necessary to really renovate, in the true sense, systems that are in place. When we look at, for example, just the water recycling networks that we see in many locations in the Middle East, there's not the appropriate sewage system. There may not be an appropriate stormwater management that is in place. So a lot of water is actually being wasted. Therefore, we need to go to the very beginning of the system to really install the infrastructure that is necessary, that is then, let's say, providing the foundation for the normal family to really go about their business of constructing their family house in a green way.
Matthias Pfeiffer, you just said you have to leave. Would you allow a last question? Because I was so eager to ask you again. We were talking now about procurement, about wood, about glass fiber, but you have been a supporter of the steel
yes.
as the main source. What would you be after this workshop now? Your opinion on this? You stay there? Do you have anything to add before you have to leave us?
Sure. No, I stay with the steel, to be honest. I know, of course, wood is perfect because it has a negative input. I mean, it is saving carbon, which steel obviously doesn't do. But there are limited resources to that. And so we have to find solutions beyond the ideal. The ideal is perfect, of course, but better do 1,000 things not perfect, but good, than doing one thing perfect. And that's it. That's in many topics it is. If you always try to get the absolute maximum, you sometimes do not reach anything, and that's it. And so steel is a compromise, if you want, because it is light and it is reusable, 100% reusable for a circular economy. I know if you reuse steel, it again will need energy. Of course, I know that, but still, it is an opportunity. And for us in Germany, it's much better than just using concrete, as we do in thousands and hundred thousands of tons every year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, concrete is, I've learned this, 1 liter of concrete is cheaper than 1 liter of water.
No, that's not right. And then you should change the teacher.
Okay, but at least it serves also of engaging into a discussion on which is the affordable and sustainable means. And we have also in Europe and in Germany also this new procurement law. Does this change anything in urban planning and construction? One question, and another question to the Jordanians, which are your resources of the future you would like to work more with? Would it be also steel, or do you have other solutions?
About procurement, was you asked me? No,
I ask anyone, but since
anyone.
you are about to leave, you are free to be the first.
No. I had already my talk. Thank you.
Okay, Lina, I think you were about to answer. Thank you.
The question, I didn't hear it very well.
You didn't hear me very well. Okay, since Mr. Matthias Pfeiffer is convinced that steel and recycled steel would be one of the main construction resources of the future of Germany's construction industry, what would be the resource you feel is valuable for Jordan? Would it be wood? Would it be still? Would it also be steel?
It will be steel and concrete. I think wood is not available or affordable for us in Jordan.
Maybe we might have. Now, the issue with building material, I think Nora mentioned the point of unlearning. The problem with the architecture and engineering sector is because when you build a building, it stays there for 100 years or more. People are really reluctant to using new materials. But there is huge room for research in terms of building materials. Now, there was a task force, I think, at Yale University that I took part in that spoke about the role of wood. Now, we usually base our judgments on our previous knowledge, but there are always new technologies. Now, they were talking about going up 8 stories using wood. So these technologies are coming up. The thing is, we don't really know about them. This is one example. The other one is the use of mud, for example, something as simple as that. When we were discussing this as part of the Urban Development Committee at this Royal Initiative a few months ago, we discovered, or mentioned that there were no building codes for you to use ramped mud, for example, or soil in the building process. So there is, phase change materials as a thing that is coming up, for example. There's so much that is there, but we need to integrate it not only in our codes, but also in our way of thinking when we design buildings and infrastructure.
Thank you, Mohammed. We have one question in the chat, which is from Mr. Jochen Pleines. You are from the Jordanian Association. Welcome to this roundtable. And your question is as follows. Are those of the panelists who are already active in Jordan in contact with each other? Is there any platform or a network of exchange? I would even open up this question to all of you. Did you know other co-panelists today before? If yes, how many? Maybe you can just show with your hands how familiar you have been with each other. 4, no one, 1, 2, and some indecisions. About those who already are active in Jordan, which are the networks that you are using and working?
Okay, so the Jordan Green Building Council is a great network, mainly for the private sector, but also in full collaboration with the public sector. One of the networks I mentioned to you was the committee that was developed for urban development by the Royal Court. That's another venue. And I've known Lina for so many years. We always meet at events. We follow each other on social media. We like each other's posts and so on. So there is this network. It's not like that we sometimes agree, sometimes disagree. In a lot of cases, we work together. So, for example, the Jordan GBC worked on retrofitting 50 homes in several local communities, and through Chatham House, I think at that time. But then the JREEF came in and supported this through providing them with solar water heaters. So this collaboration does exist in Jordan, and I think we are all proud of this cooperation.
Indeed, that's true. Any other partners besides the EMA and the Jordan Green Building Council, for instance? Also within Germany, maybe you have a network that you would like to highlight or to recommend? At the same time, I also, in my initial words, said that this is only a first pilot initial roundtable that we are hosting, and we are planning further activities. And I really hope that after this rich meeting of today, you will be all in, and even you have more ideas for topics and more actors of your network that we could integrate in order to really move further the discussion and the activity planning. I would have a final, a little bit political question. Please allow me, because we have in Germany, I think it's around 20 years ago that we had it, but now in our new government, we have for the first time since years, Ministry for Construction, Bauministerium, that hadn't existed before. And when we talk about climate, it is also now new that climate protection is like a more intergovernmental affair, that in each ministry that we have in Germany, there is like departments for climate protection. When I wanted to find out who in the federal government was responsible to organize German participation at the COP, I had to call 4 or 5 ministries, and they all said, oh, I think it's the other one. I exaggerate a little bit in order to make it worthy the discussion. I mean, Lina, you are the one who's working closely with different ministries and stakeholders. What would be your best practice in how to work with multiple ministries and actors in Jordan? What is working well, and what is a challenge for you? And I believe also, now Lina is frozen.
I think she's frozen. I can, if you want.
Yeah, maybe you can get it, Mohammed. Just please a last question, because I feel there's no ministry for construction in Jordan, right? Or do you?
No,
have
there is the Ministry of Public Works and Housing.
Okay.
The Minister of Public Works chairs the National Building Council, which develops the codes. So they're responsible for the codes. We have something called the Royal Scientific Society, which develops the codes. And we have the Jordan Engineers Association, which approves the plans. So this is the ecosystem for construction. Now, coming back to climate change, there's a directorate at the Ministry of Environment responsible for climate change. And it is the facilitator of discussions and NDCs and so on between different government departments. Now, the thing is, we always call for more empowerment for the Ministry of Environment when it comes to these issues. But as I mentioned to you, His Majesty himself was at COP. He spoke about all of these issues, and it's becoming more mainstream than it used to. You know, I remember when we started discussing these issues nearly 2 decades ago, there was no awareness. Now there is. What we are calling for more of is action. So yes, there are legal umbrellas within the government to address the climate change issue and green economy as well. There's a green economy unit at the Ministry of Environment with members from different ministries.
Any experiences from the German side on that? I see, Jan, you are.
I think I need to answer. Okay, so as for the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, even this was not your direct question. We have a Ministry of Environment where the climate protection is a topic. And we, of course, have other ministries which have departments which are dealing with the topic of climate change or environment protection in the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Economy, also in the Ministry of Science, and also in the Ministry of Construction, as you want, more or less integrated. I'm not quite sure what is the right solution, and I think it is a big challenge to address this in the concept of the, let's say, this very clearly sectoral understanding of the government, because this means always any kind of integrated action means a challenge of interaction between the different ministries, and this shows how complex this topic is. So I believe that if we want to move further here, we need to have a very strong engagement on the level of the state secretaries or the government leadership in terms of climate change. So we get an integration in the direct work of the government. But I need to, of course, admit that I'm not a member of the government, and I'm talking just from looking from outside. For the federal part, you are absolutely right. We, in the last years, had more a Ministry of Transport and less a Ministry of Construction and, for example, housing. This, however, doesn't mean that the topic was not addressed. So the departments were still there. But of course, in the naming of the ministries, you see the let's say the priorities of the action if you read between the lines. And I am very happy that we are now having a Ministry of Construction again, because the challenges in construction, this is not only the housing topic, but especially the topics that are coming ahead. The topic of materials are urgent, not only because it's a topic of sustainability in terms of ecological terms, but also as a topic of economy, because we don't have the materials at the moment, and we don't know whether this will change or not. So this is very important, but still the topic of climate change and climate protection is an integrative topic. So we actually would be very happy to have it addressed on the leadership of the federal government, and this partly is the case, partly not, as you might know. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have two more hands raised. One question has been raised by my colleague Jens Kutscher in the chat, and it's for you, Heinz Rittmann and Eika Drescher. It's about the follow-up question: how could technical and vocational education and training, TVET, address this issue of raising awareness and implementing new methods or introducing new materials among construction companies and workers? Also to you, Lina, if you still can be with us because you had technical problems. And then also, before you answer the question, I would just like to make sure, Lina Mubaydin, you raised your hand. You wanted to say something?
Yes. But
cool. Very good.
For you, at first, for the climate change issue, that we have the Ministry of Environment is the designation national authority for any issues related to the climate change. But when we are talking about the construction and the building, so the most related ministry is the Ministry of Public Housing with the National Council. And also each component in each ministry are also driven by the concerned entity. For example, we have a committee for licensing companies. We have our committee for the climate change from all the national focal points. For example, I am the focal point from energy sector for the climate change in the Ministry of Environment. So we have different ministries with different also committee that are other. On the other hand, when we are talking about the construction and the most important components are the construction company and also the final consumer. The decision is finally is to the final consumer, to the owner, who will decide who will go to the energy efficient component or not. The contractor has some responsibility, and also we have the engineering association, we have the construction association. They are the private sector or non-governmental organization. They have the authority to license them and to govern them. So we have different entity with different responsibility and different authority. But we are looking to cooperative with each other in order to go and overcome all of these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. So, Heinz Rittmann, Eika Drescher, please.
Yeah. I think the answering of for your colleague is a little bit more complex, because you must see how is the training system in the Jordan construction sector working. And meanwhile, there are two, but in the past there was only one institution who was allowed to train young people in the construction sector. You must look how much time they need for the initial training, and also you must look how much money they received from the training institute. In the past, it was only net. Meanwhile, I think there's one other institution that is allowed to train in the construction sector, and the apprentices receive round about 100 euro for, let's say, transportation fees or something like this from net. But if the apprenticeship received in another company, let's say for normal work, 110 euro, then they leave the apprenticeship and they've never been seen. So we started a first discussion with our partners to think about the system of training in the construction sector. And because only 6-month trainings or 9 months, I think it's not enough. You don't must cover the German system, no question. But there's something between 3 years in Germany or 6 months in Jordan that could be also available for the Jordan construction sector that must be developed. But for, let's say, create thoughts about the existing system in the Jordan construction sector, to improve it, you need much more time. And you also need time if you want to train the young people also concerning ecological aspects in the construction sector. So it needs time and a fast solution. I think I don't see a fast solution. Thank you.
How about you, Eika?
Yeah, so it's all about the education and to educate the apprentices while they're doing their apprenticeship or try to learn their occupation. And in other crafts, there are some parts within the learning, like virtual reality, to save material and resources. Of course, this is not the only solution. You can't do only virtual welding, but you save gas and things. So this is a topic which is increasing more and more in the apprenticeships all over the world, like the virtual reality. But of course, when you do an apprenticeship, you have to educate the single person and create awareness and show what kind of new materials are there. And even the private sector, the companies, they need to show their apprenticeships here in Germany. Wow, we can do this now with this material, or this is sustainable. So it's all about the teaching and to get a modern approach into the apprenticeship and create a personal mind for the people so that they are willing to save the material, to be responsible. I don't know if you were talking about wood, you can use wood and oh, I did a mistake, okay, it's gone, I take a new one. So it's, yeah, you have to educate them and train them well and change the curricula and be up to date. I think that's the important part of the apprentice.
So, changing curricula, training the trainers and the students. I feel we have really had a rich 1 hour 49 and I have so many notes. I rarely take so many notes during moderations of a panel, and I'm really looking very much forward of having some conclusions of this workshop and first and foremost also a follow-up with all of you. Please, on behalf of the EMA and also, if I may, the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia, I would really like to thank you very much for your open and constructive contributions, and I'm looking very much forward to furthering this dialogue format even more. Have a great day. I hope that you have also a lot of food for thought, and see you all soon, and just keep up your good work. Goodbye, and also thank you for the audience to having participated today.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
Bye.
much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.